My name is Jason J. Rock Houston, and you're listening to Guitarist Magazine. We can be found on the web at www.guitarist.com. And my special guest today is Paul Delis, the lead singer from the Kiss tribute band based out of Los Angeles, the Gods of Thunder. And Paul, you play the role of Paul Stanley, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Jason.
And we're going to be talking to Paul today, not about Kiss, but this is for our record segment, and he chose the album he wants to talk about today, Van Halen 1. And so let's get right into it, Paul. Why is that the album you chose?
Well, I very vividly remember this album coming out, and I was just absolutely well, I didn't get it initially.
Okay.
The bass player and bass player / lead singer in my garage band back in the 70s, he came flying over to the house and said, "You got to listen to this album. You got to hear it. You got to hear it." So he drops this thing on, and the first thing you hear is that "Running with the Devil" intro, and it was just like, whoa, what is that?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Michael Anthony with that boom, boom, boom. Oh, it's like, wow, that is so. And then of course Eddie Van Halen just takes off on the guitar, and then there was Eruption, and it just went on and on and on. And I was just blown away by the sound.
Now let me ask you, because like I said, you play the role of Paul Stanley in your Kiss tribute band, Gods of Thunder, and you do a real good job at what you do. But I bring that up because Paul Stanley, very much like David Lee Roth, totally different kind of spectrums, but they're both very flamboyant frontmen. So once you get into Van Halen, how big of an influence was Dave on you as far as being an entertainer, a lead singer, and a performer?
Oh, yeah, huge, because once we, MTV and all the videos and stuff started coming out,
yeah.
On TV and stuff, it just watching him with just jumping up in the air seemed like he was like 40 feet off the ground doing the splits and everything, and just the way he carried himself on stage, I was just like completely mesmerized by his whole whole stage presence.
Yeah, but the thing about David Lee Roth, to me, it's amazing because I always was a huge fan of his. And as a teenager, you don't really necessarily think of these things, but people tell you today, like if you were to compare him to, let's say, Paul Rodgers, or let's say even a Ronnie James Dio, or somebody like that, or even Robert Plant, he's not like a super superior singer, but I will tell you, Dave is really great at what he does. He's proved kind of that you don't have to be a great singer to be successful. He's great at what he does, and I think for Van Halen, he was the perfect singer, if you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah, and it was like a 4-piece puzzle.
Yeah.
And every single one of them just very much like Kiss, and very much like many numerous bands. Led Zeppelin. Everyone had their own individual contribution.
Yeah.
To the overall sound success, the look, and everything on stage.
Yeah.
And you can't go wrong when you have a bass player that can sing backing vocals like Michael Anthony.
Yeah, he. Let's be honest. Michael Anthony is the background vocal sound of that band, and and even for for a different kind of truth, they get Wolfgang Van Halen in there, and he's kind of great at that too. But Michael Anthony, when you think of the background sound of Van Halen, he's the guy you think of.
Right.
And
yeah, but Eddie sang some backing vocals too.
Well, in fact, Eddie was actually the original lead singer of the band before they got Dave, but of course he realized he was a better guitar player than a singer, and so when they found Dave, they said, why don't we get this guy? But the thing too with David, he doesn't get enough credit for is I've heard the guys talk over years where it was actually David Lee Roth who told Eddie, "Hey Ed, when you're up there on stage, don't let anybody see what you're doing. With your fingers, kind of turn your back to the audience so nobody can see what you're doing."
Yeah.
Which is just kind of amazing for a singer to kind of have that kind of intelligence.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And yeah, just going back to that album, I mean, because we talked about running with the devil and the way that whole album just breaks loose from there, and then Eruption.
Yeah. I mean, for its time, I mean, that's like one of the rare times that I can even think of. I mean, today guitar players do that. They release instrumental guitar music albums, and you got like 10 blazing solos, but they did not release tracks like that. That was kind of first time anybody really done anything like that. And I mean, what a statement to kind of open the album with that.
Yeah, I know, because it's just like okay, we're gonna have the band do bum ba bum ba bum, and then okay, Eddie, you just go ahead and play a lead guitar solo for about 2 minutes.
Well, I'm sure you heard the story. It was actually while they were recording or they were rehearsing or whatever in the studio. Ted Templeman, the producer, walked in, and Eddie was kind of just doing that little thing. And Templeman's like, "Hey, what is that? That we got to put that on the record." And he's like, "What? Just kind of fooling around." And it's just amazing, like Paul, when you think that a guy could have that kind of talent and not really be aware of it. Like Ted Templeman had the ear to hear how great that Eruption was, and Eddie like, "Oh, it's just something I'm doing. It's not that big of a deal, But it was.
Yeah, and then from Eruption, you go into the Ray Davies. You really got me.
Now, I'm glad you brought that up, because you really got me. That's the one track a lot of people point to off that first album, and a lot of people listening to this, they might think, "You really got me." No, that's a Van Halen. No, it's a King song, but Van Halen.
Yeah.
They did such a great cover of it. They really owned the song, and that's how great of a cover it is. That people think that's a Van Halen song.
Right, because they took what the Kinks originally put on there, put on vinyl, and then they just amped it up like 1,000%, and they made it sound like it was an original Van Halen.
Oh yeah.
Tune. Yeah.
And that's how a lot of those bands got broke back in the day. I mean, even in the 70s and 80s, a lot of bands would, like when you're first coming out, especially, you'd cover a song to kind of get on the radio, and it worked for, not just Van Halen, but a lot of other bands at the time,
Yeah. Yep.
And I'll tell you another song I really love off. I mean, see, Van Halen 1, the interesting thing is just, it's an awesome album from top to bottom. There's not really even a filler tune on there, but one song that really stood out to me, "Feel Your Love Tonight."
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
I mean, just that's like a good time summer song. You could just imagine he's driving down the street, got a girl in the back of the car or whatever. But I mean, you can just totally visualize what's going on in the lyrics.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
And what are some of your other favorite? Like you probably agree like me. Like there's really not a bad tune on there, but I think another one that
isn't
kind of stands out, and I don't know who originally did, but it's a cover tune too, "Ice Cream Man." But again, that is such a David Lee Roth tune that he really owns it.
Yeah, and he gets up on stage and he's got the guitar on and he starts it off, ba-doom boom 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 ba-doom ba-doom doom doom ba-doom doom 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 ba-doom doom, and then because that's a perfect Dave moment, something perfect for Dave on stage.
I mean, only David Lee Roth could take a song about ice cream and kind of just really rock it up and get the audience off on it. But it's a fun little tune, and I mean, it rocks and everything. But if you listen to, it's almost got kind of like a nod to like vaudeville, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it kind of sort of does. It's got that kind of swing and that vibe to it,
Yeah, and a lot of the friction I heard over the years between Dave and the brothers was because they were much more into like hard rock and metal stuff, whereas Dave was more into like show tunes and stuff. And but like even they said since then, that's kind of what Dave brought into the band, and it's kind of his influence, and the two worlds kind of collide. But They made beautiful music, as you could hear off that very first album.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because, years later, Ted Templeman would work with the Bullet Boys, especially if you go back to the first Bullet Boys album. they were trying to dress the guys up like to look like Van Halen. I mean, it had a Van Halen sound to it, especially that first album, and of course you're working with the same producer, so I mean, there you go.
Yeah. When you have the same producer, and there's success. There's success. It kind of becomes a blueprint for them.
Yeah.
And they kind of follow what they know works. And so like the old saying goes, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because of all the Bolt Boy stuff, I do think I like that first album the best because it is kind of a nod to Van Halen, and I don't think they necessarily went in trying to sound like Van Halen. That's just kind of their influence coming out. But then by the time they got to their second album, talking about the Bullet Boys, they had a little trouble repeating that success.
Yeah.
And that's why I think part of it is too when you're in a band. That's why a band like Van Halen worked. They weren't trying to be like anybody. That debut album, they went in the studio, and they just that was the band coming to life, so to speak. I mean, literally, if you listen to that, that album came out in 1978. But you're listening to it today, all these years later, you can hear the band kind of developing their sound. Their sound is coming to life on that album.
Oh yes, yeah, absolutely. They just fine-tuned it and honed their sound as the albums came out. Each one was a little bit
different,
more precision. As far as everything goes. Musicianship wise, in vocals, everything just got a little more finely tuned. As the different albums came out. But that's why I wanted to talk about Van Halen 1, because that was their like
the pinnacle.
Okay, this is us.
Yeah, and
this is us.
I think they'd been playing around LA. Like, I mean, they got started really early. Like before they were even playing the Strip, they were doing backyard parties in Pasadena, and they were building a reputation even as far back as 1976. So, by the time 1978 rolls around, I mean, they've really honed their craft. And Alex and Eddie, of course. They were just locked in with each other. I mean, it's kind of funny because usually the bass player and the drummer kind of, got that tight rhythm section. But I've heard the guys talk over years where they could kind of, they knew what the other guy was going to play before he even played a lick,
Yeah, well, see, and here's another funny little tidbit. Alex was the guitar player initially.
Oh, yeah.
And Eddie was the drummer when they first came to when they started growing up a little bit after coming to America, and moving to Pasadena, and that was kind of a funky little tidbit I found out because I did a little bit more of a deep dive, researching some things for this interview, so I could come off as knowledgeable and not like going, oh yeah, Van Halen 1.
Oh yeah,
great album, dude.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, Paul, because in doing these interviews, especially these ones we call On the Record, which very much as you can tell, what we do is we take a deep dive into. I let the guests kind of decide what album would you like to. What's an album in your collection, or not even your collection, but an album that really had a huge influence on you. Let's talk about that. And really, and very much like you, I want to sound like I know what I'm talking about. Most of the bands I'm aware of, but I want to be able to say, this album peaked at whatever, or this is a little interesting fact, kind of like what you're saying. I like to come across that I know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you very much do. So, and it's very funny too, because in doing these interviews, I'll tell you, you're about the third guy that I've talked to about Van Halen 1. And a lot of people listening to this might think, okay, you've already covered Van Halen 1. Why are you talking to somebody else about it? But I'll tell you why. Because everybody has a different story, Paul. So what you got out of an album is not going to be the same thing that somebody else gets out of it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly.
And see, exactly. So a lot of people, they listen to Van Halen maybe from a guitar player's perspective, and you're a guitar player too, maybe, so we can talk a little bit about that, but you're also a frontman and a singer, so, we could talk to you about, like I was doing at the top interview, so talk about, David Lee Roth, how big an influence was he on, you as a performer and a frontman, because just being a singer and having the ability to sing, I mean, you have to have a little more than just that. Like I said, David Lee Roth's not a great singer, but he's a great entertainer, and that's why he's had the success he's had, over the years.
Yeah. David Lee Roth knew how to own the crowd, how to control the crowd.
Yeah.
He knew that like there was no tomorrow. He's not the best frontman in the history of rock, but he is up there.
Yeah, and what I will say about that, see, that's why I love talking about a guy like David Lee Roth, because he's a guy that I don't want to say he's got limited skills, but he works with what he's got and he makes it work for him. I mean, he's a much better singer than I am, so I'm not going to knock the guy, but I think you hear what I'm saying. I mean, he works with what he's got, and he makes it work for him, and he's great at doing that. I mean, another thing I love about Dave is if you just dive into some of the lyrics, some of his lyrics are kind of nonsensical. They're very Roth-like, if you know what I mean. And they don't even have to, like, even in Jump, there's a line where it says, "Got my back against the wrecking machine." What the hell is a wrecking machine? But it doesn't really matter. It just seems to work for the song,
Yes. It's like, because, well, a lot of the great songwriters.
Yeah.
You can actually just take the vocal track and just listen to what they're singing, and it's like you kind of.
I mean, Steven Tyler's a perfect example of that. I mean, like, even just listen to "Walk This Way," and that's probably one of the earliest close thing you're gonna get to a rap song back in the '70s. Before rap was really became what it was. But he was doing that way before, and a lot of his, like, I've heard him talk about writing songs, and he'll just kind of like rhyme scheme things, and they don't even have to make sense. But he's great at what he does. And somebody's telling me David Lee Roth on the '96 Greatest Hits album, they had a new song called "Me Wise Magic," and it's just a great sounding tune. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, but this guy I know that plays in a Van Halen tribute band, he was telling me, he goes, I went back and I was studying the lyrics, and he goes, those lyrics throughout the song, they're actually like yoga phrases. So, I mean, I was saying that there was a song on the '96 Greatest Hits album called "Me Wise Magic," and and this guy that plays in a Van Halen tribute, he's telling me, he goes, I was studying some of these lyrics, and I actually discovered that it was like yoga phrasing all throughout the song. I mean, that's where David Lee Roth's mind goes, and it's just mind blowing. But it made for a great, fun little tune,
Yeah. I kind of lost you for a second there, Jason. I don't know what happened.
That's all right. That's all right. Yeah,
but you're back now. You're back now.
Yeah. So like I said, you're very much the front man in your band and the singer, but playing Paul Stanley, you also got to play. You're also a guitar player. So listening from a guitar player's perspective, obviously, how big of an influence was Eddie on you as a guitar player?
I could never, ever in a million
do what he
years
does.
Play guitar like him. So I didn't even try.
Yeah.
Because just from listening to Eruption, that first time I heard Eruption, when my bass player came over to my house with this brand new album that he just bought with that black cover and that VH logo.
Oh yeah.
And the four guys on the front cover. I was just like, that's a cool album cover. Being a Kiss fan, Kiss has some pretty cool album covers.
Oh yeah.
I saw that one. I was just like, whoa, I got to hear this.
Well, yeah, and what's funny is you go back to the first Van Halen albums, kind of like, it's not a great album cover. It's just like got the four kind of guys on the cover, but you're like, when you put that album on, I mean, there's no denying what a great album. And it's kind of interesting that you bring up Eruption, because it would be years later, probably the next kind of guitar track that really spoke to me like that, oddly enough, would be another David Lee Roth related song, would be Yankee Rose. I'll never forget the first time I saw the video, the way Steve Vai made his guitar talk. I mean, like, David, what are you, get in here or whatever, but it literally spoke to me, and I'm like, man, I've never heard a guitar talk to me like that.
Yep, Yankee Rose. Another one of my favorite songs on this album. Like I said, we said this, I don't know how many times. Yeah. Every song on this album is excellent.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Little Dreamer.
Oh yeah, that's probably the most different sounding tune on that whole album.
That's why it was always one of my favorites off this album, because it wasn't this constant barrage of, nonstop guitar and big drum sound and big bass sound and David Lee Roth with the squeals and everything. It was a totally different sound, and that's why it really resonated with me and stuck with me as probably one of my favorite songs, if not my favorite song on the album, just because of that simple fact. It was a little more laid back, a little more pulled back, and it allowed, the backing vocals, you could hear it in, Little Dreamer.
Yeah, and another great tune off the album is it's not necessarily my favorite, but it's a track that kind of stands out. Atomic Punk. I mean, of everything on that album, it really and back in 1978, Van Halen was really not considered a metal band, but that's got elements of metal, or even hard rock, if you know what I mean, and it really stands out for that reason.
It does, and with Eddie with the with the guitar scratching on the string.
Yeah.
I thought that was a pretty cool little way to include a pick slide or pick scratching into a song. It's like, oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah. You don't hear that.
Yeah.
It's like with Eruption, you don't hear a guitar solo, recorded on an album either.
Yeah. And all these years later, when you talk about that first Van Halen album, it's one of the most influential albums. I mean, people, like I said, are still talking about that album all these years later, as far as, not just one of the top Van Halen albums, but one of the top rock albums of all time. It always is being mentioned, and it's just amazing. It's had that kind of impact. And Van Halen 2, the next album came out in 1979. To me, it's kind of a continuation of the first one, and probably the most different track on there to me, which probably my favorite one, has to be Dance the Night Away. And I bring that up because it's kind of a little fun pop tune, but the interesting thing is you hear the opening lick, you know what song that is.
Yeah, exactly.
And how many TV shows and movies have you heard that song being played in?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
Tons of them.
And I got to ask, throughout your lifetime, have you ever had a chance to see Van Halen live?
No, I have not.
Yeah.
But see, going back to Van Halen playing backyard parties in Pasadena. Well, I grew up in Azusa.
Okay.
Which is like 15 minutes. Well, back then in the 70s.
Yeah.
It was 15 minutes. Now it's more like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
with all the traffic, and I had never ever heard of Van Halen.
Wow.
I'd never heard of Van Halen.
Uh-huh.
And knowing that they're from Pasadena, it's like, man, I should have been more. My parents were very strict.
Yeah.
And so I was not allowed to really go out and do the party scene.
Yeah.
But I should have had my ear more to the ground.
Interesting.
And I could have probably seen Van Halen for free back before they were
anybody. Yeah.
Playing in a backyard party somewhere. Somebody doing a keg stand.
Yeah.
And, in the backyard listening to Van Halen.
Yeah. That's amazing. So I got to ask, as a Van Halen fan, obviously, that was the first album that really got you into the band. But when Dave finally left, in 1985, and it was announced Sammy was joining the band, what was your initial reaction?
I wasn't sure. Because I'm one of those guys that has that wait and see. You got to prove it to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not judgmental.
Yeah.
Right out of the gate.
Yeah. I mean, myself, kind of like you. You're saying initially, I thought, wow, who the hell are they going to get to replace David Lee Roth? And I kind of had my doubts. And when I heard what they did with Sammy, I liked it. It was a different sound. and kind of like what you're saying, I said, well, okay, I can get into this, but it's it's a different sound. It's not kind of my Van Halen, but yeah, okay, I can listen to this.
Yeah, because I like Sammy's music. You know, I Can't Drive 55. If you say, name me a Sammy Hagar tune, everybody's gonna say I Can't Drive 55.
Yeah, and I'll tell you a funny story about that is, I'd heard all those tunes off the Montrose album, because when he joined Van Halen, I was like still a teenager, and I'd heard all those classic songs from the first Montrose album, ton of times on the radio. Who hasn't? But the funny thing, I was not aware that was Sammy Hagar, and then I did not realize. Oh wait, okay, that's the guy singing on that album. The guy that's in Van Halen now. Oh wow, okay, he's been around that long, Kind of interesting. I discovered it through the back door, but great. That's a great album. The Montrose one too.
Yeah, and because bands have had people come and go.
Yeah.
Over the history of rock. Look at Kiss, for example.
Oh yeah.
Ace Frehley. Peter Criss left, and then Ace Frehley left, and it's like, okay, who's going to replace him?
Yeah.
And you get Eric Carr, rest in peace, Eric.
Yeah.
And then they have Vinnie Vincent, and Vinnie. Nothing against Vinnie Vincent, but Vinnie Vincent did not fit Kiss at all. He can play guitar,
and he's a pretty good writer, and I think that really the thing that gets in his way is his ego and a lot of other things. I mean, I don't know why he didn't just become a songwriter for other people, but he's had so many chances. In fact, I was just reading something online today where he's selling like for just a ton of ridiculous dough, like handwritten lyrics, from Kiss songs and Vinnie Vincent, like $3,000 for just each song separately, a ridiculous amount of money. It's like, and what I even laugh at, he tries to sell these autographed CDs of like the Vinnie Vincent Invasion that originally came out in 1986. You go on his official website, all these CDs he's selling because it has his autograph for like $150. I would rather buy any Kiss CD for like $15. I mean, you're just kind of ripping off your fans at that point,
Right. Yeah. It becomes a money
grab.
thing,
Yeah.
Yeah. Just okay. My only claim to fame is was for the what was it 3 years he was in Kiss or 2 years, something like that.
Yeah.
That's my only claim to fame. So I'm going to use that and just take advantage of what I did in that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't try it if you're Vinnie Vincent. You try to make at least a new album or something. If you're gonna give the fans something. You've been gone for 20 years.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and because Sammy, I always liked Sammy Hagar's voice. I just like the way he sang. He just sounded like a confident singer.
Sammy he's very confident in what he does. I mean, like I read in an interview recently Alex Van Halen gave, I think it was in Drummer Magazine or something, where he was saying, really the difference between Dave, there's a lot of difference, but just, lyrically speaking, like Dave is much more of a poet, whereas Sammy's a great lyric writer.
Right.
Like, I mean, if you listen to that Sammy stuff, I mean, he really puts a lot of thought and emotion into his songs. I mean, just the lyrics he thinks a lot about as he's writing the lyrics, and then as he performs all these songs, even in the studio, he's singing from the heart. He's one of those guys, and I'm a fan of all Van Halen. I will say, maybe I'm a bigger fan of Dave Lee Roth stuff, just because that was my initial introduction to the band, like a lot of people. But I love it all,
Right, and that kind of correlates to me as a Kiss fan.
Yeah.
I originally fell in love with Kiss and their music and their show and everything when they first came out.
Yeah.
And so that's what we do with Gods of Thunder.
Yeah.
All of us in the band, every one of us, that's a prerequisite. You have to be a huge Kiss fan first, because if you're not going to put your heart and soul into it.
Yeah, I mean, and I think part of the reason Kiss has had the success, I mean, fans really love them, and see that's the difference between like Kiss and a guy like Vinnie Vincent. I mean, like I could even see when Gene Simmons put out his box set, I'll be honest, I didn't buy it because I don't. That's kind of crazy to spend that much money on a CD. But
Yes.
I could even see something like that because he said, okay, if you're going to spend all this money on buying the box set, I'll show up somewhere. I'll make an appearance. Even if you go meet the band, of these VIP packages, it costs an arm and a leg maybe, but they're giving you, they're giving you their time and it's
Right.
more than just shake my hand and get my autograph. I mean, I understand those VIP things, they give you like goodie bags and stuff. So, that's the difference is you're actually getting something that more than just an autograph or, $3,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was Gene Simmons,
Yeah.
The Vault.
Yeah. That's what
That's
that
what
was.
it's called, The Vault.
But even like the Kiss box set, okay, something like that, I don't mind paying for it because you're getting stuff that's previously unreleased. It's not even just a repackaging of his stuff. You get a nice little box set and some goodies thrown in. Even like they've been repackaging some of the classic Black Sabbath. Like they did a nice little reissue of Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules now, and I paid about $30 for that, but it was worth it because you're getting all this little extra stuff that didn't come with the original packaging.
Yeah.
So I dig stuff like that. And getting back to Van Halen, I mean they just were always a great live band, and I think it makes sense that I could not believe when it was announced Eddie had passed. You're getting people like the day he passed. Wolfgang's were going to replace his dad. And even Wolfie was getting pissed off and coming out and say, no, nobody's ever going to replace Eddie Van Halen. Van Halen is never going to step on the stage again. And I don't know that I'd want them to, because then something like that really would be a cash grab.
Yes. Yeah, that would. I would. If somebody, if Van Halen were to try to find somebody to play Eddie Van Halen's parts on stage, I would kind of like be standoffish about that.
Yeah.
I would probably not be a supporter.
Yeah.
Because Eddie Van Halen, he was
unique. He was one of a kind.
And this is something I told my guys when we talked after Eddie passed, and I said there was only one Edward Van Halen.
Yeah.
He reinvented what a guitar was capable of doing.
Yeah, and the most amazing thing about that, Paul, that statement's so true, but it's because, I mean, especially when you consider, you'd probably be surprised to learn that Eddie could not read a lick of music, as great a player as he was, but yet look what he did with that guitar.
Yep, I can't read sheet music.
No, I mean it's not the most. It's kind of like it reminds me of I was reading Paul Stanley's book and back in 1980 when Peter first left the band after Unmasked, they were gonna consider letting him come back into the band, and Paul says he showed up and he has all this sheet music. We know he can't read a lick of sheet music.
Yeah. There's so many great musicians that can't read sheet music. I'm one of those guys. Let me hear the song and I'll start playing along with it.
So are you a guy that can play by ear? Like if you listen to the record?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
I took 19 lessons, pretty much, basically, just basic guitar lessons when I was like 11 or 12 years old, and it was on a child's acoustic guitar. Mm-hmm. It had the nylon strings and everything. It was just your basic guitar.
Wow.
And I took 19 lessons just so I could learn where the notes are.
Yeah.
Okay, this is an E, an F, G. Just so I could learn where the notes are.
Wow.
And what tone that note had. And then from there, I was just like, okay, I just started teaching myself
to play. And let me ask you, because being a guy that plays, Paul Stanley in a Kiss tribute band and plays all this great Kiss music, somebody was telling me that, Paul's an amazing rhythm player. That the rhythm parts he plays in the songs are really kind of difficult. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, there are. When I first started playing guitar, and subsequently well, let me rephrase that. When I got out of the Army in '95, I hadn't played guitar in 13 years.
Oh wow!
So because the Army takes pretty much all of your time.
Yeah.
So when I got out in '95,
a little rusty, huh?
What's that?
A little rusty, huh? Had to kind of.
Oh yeah. I did. There were friends that I had in the Army that they had guitars, and I would pick it up and play around a little bit.
Yeah.
But other than that, I really wasn't playing like all the time.
Yeah.
I went and found myself a guitar. I bought a guitar from a music store, and I started playing again. And it took me a few years to actually
master
remember some of the songs I used to play when I was in the garage band and before I joined the Army and stuff. And it was like, wow, I still remember, but I don't remember. So then I would get on the internet and then find out, and then start playing and playing. And then, Kiss got back together, their reunion tour and all this other stuff started happening. And so I was like, oh, cool. I want to go see Kiss again.
Yeah.
And so I made a costume, platform boots costume and everything. And so I started going out to Kiss concerts all dressed up.
Wow.
And well, that's how I met my Gene Simmons, was at a Kiss concert.
Yeah.
And so he asked me, he goes, please tell me that you can sing and play guitar like Paul Stanley. And so I told him, I said, well, as a matter of fact, I can.
Wow. Well, small world.
Because like I said, I started getting back into playing guitar again.
Wow.
Which was, playing guitar and playing rock and roll, in front of people. That was my first love, my first passion.
Wow.
And so for me to go from a guy that hadn't played guitar in 13 years, been in the United States Army, and eventually, a few, I think it was like 8 years later.
Yeah.
I'm standing on a stage dressed up in full Kiss garb.
Yeah.
Portraying my favorite rock star, Paul Stanley.
Yeah.
And it's like, cool.
And what's the craziest thing you've ever experienced as a result of that? I mean, I forget who it was, but I was talking to another guy who played in a Kiss tribute band as Gene Simmons, and he was telling me some story about that he went to see Kiss, like play at Irvine Meadows years ago, and he was dressed up as Gene Simmons. He was in the line to get in the concert, and he said people were coming up wanting to have their photo taken with him because they really thought he was Gene Simmons. Come on, hey Gene, come take. And he's like, no, I'm not Gene. Yeah, you are. But I mean, anything crazy like that ever happened to you?
Well, see, I don't have a hairy chest like Paul Stanley.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not 6'7" with my boots on.
Yeah.
So people look at me and go, nice costume, dude. You look great, but you're not Paul Stanley. So but no, just going to concerts, dressed up. That's the coolest thing because people just kind of like gravitate towards you.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you have, you're a strong magnet, and people are cheap metal, and they just come over to you, and they just want their picture taken, and have a conversation with you or whatever.
Yeah.
And then they just kind of wander off. They go back to doing what they were doing.
Yeah. I mean, you're playing in a tribute band, but you kind of got to kind of have that experience that the guys in Kiss must have, where what it's like to kind of. I mean, that's really a different experience than any other band if you think about it for a minute. Can you imagine being Gene or Paul up on that? I guess you could, but you look out the concert, in the audience, and you see people dressed up just like you. I mean, made up and everything. That's something like really only a band I could really say maybe before Kiss is Alice Cooper, and Alice was the only one kind of made up, and Alice isn't even as extreme as Kiss is made up.
Right.
Yeah, but it's just a unique experience. Almost kind of like it brings the audience and the guys up on stage kind of together.
Yes. We've played some larger venues and stuff like that. And when you play those larger venues, there's that percentage that will come, dressed up, costume, or maybe just have just the makeup on.
Yeah.
and they're coming to see you, and you're standing up on stage, and you're looking out in the audience, and you can see those people because they really stand out. I mean, even in a dark venue, they stand out because of white face paint and everything. So that is really cool.
I mean, it's amazing. I mean, you're talking about Van Halen, and talk about David Lee Roth as a flamboyant frontman. Paul's equally flamboyant, but the thing I got to say is one thing that really always has appealed to me about made me such a huge Kiss fan. I always dug the fact that Kiss was a band that had, especially if you go back to the original lineup, you had more than one guy as a lead singer, which really made it kind of fun because, when you listen to the album, you have more than one guy singing on the album. That was always kind of cool to me. And I know their kind of blueprint for Kiss was the Beatles. Like Paul and Gene said, they always want to have kind of a hard rock version of the Beatles, and I kind of think they succeeded at that,
Yep. Yeah, because everybody in the band sang, not initially.
Not initially. Yeah.
Yeah, because you didn't hear Ace, until
really till shocked me because I mean, even if you go back to some of the stuff off the first and second album, like Ace was writing songs, but he would give his songs like to Gene or Gene or Peter, and it's kind of interesting because if you go back, I always wondered, knowing that Gene wasn't like heavy drinker or anything, I always found it weird, but he did a song like Cold Gin, but now we know why, because Ace wasn't comfortable singing his songs back in '74.
Yep. Ace Frehley wrote Cold Gin, and he no, here, you sing it.
Yeah, I'll tell you though, I don't know if you've ever heard of a version he does off of his Origins 1 album, where Ace finally sings that lead, and I think it's great that he finally got captured his own lead vocal on that. It's a great version of it.
Yeah, well, there's been concerts where later on, the reunions and the farewells, where Ace sings the second chorus.
Yeah.
I mean, second verse. It's time to leave and get another quart.
Yeah, and see, I think even in Kiss, Gene and Paul were smart enough to not allow like Ace and Peter to like sing half the album. You know what I mean? Kind of kept it limited. I mean, like even going, because really Ace was the only one who didn't really sing lead. I mean, if you go back to the first album, you have Nothing to Lose, where Gene and Peter trade off on lead vocals. And even you have all the guys, like if you listen to the song Kissin' Time, even Peter's in there. So, and I dig by, Hotter Than Hell, that was, Strange Ways was an Ace Frehley song, but it seemed to fit Peter, interestingly enough,
Yes.
And that was interesting. And I think Kiss works because I think Gene and Paul are a perfect frontman. I mean, let's be honest, they sing most of the Kiss tunes. Paul and Peter and Ace sing a handful of tunes, but they were the two guys in the band from day one, and I think if it would have been reversed, and Gene and Paul would have left the band or whatever, I don't think it would have been the same Kiss. I mean, you'd had Peter and maybe Ace trying to sing all the lead vocals, and it might have worked, but I just don't think it would have been the same band.
Yeah, it wouldn't have the same outcome.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason. I'm not knocking Ace or Peter, but I think if they were really the great frontman, then they would have had successful. So Ace, interesting enough, since leaving Kiss the second time, he's had more of a successful solo career. So I'm glad about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm happy. I'm happy for him because I like Ace a great deal. He's not a lot of people don't give him
the credit.
The credit that I think Ace should have gotten as being a lead guitarist.
Oh yeah. I'll tell you. I got to ask you, as a guy who plays these Kiss tunes, one of my favorite tunes that they really don't get enough attention for, I think, is off Dress to Kill, Rock Bottom. I love the way Paul and Ace kind of go trade leads on that.
Yeah,
especially the opening. The opening of the intro? The intro.
Yeah, the intro, That's a harmony intro. And, because Ace is playing on one part of the guitar and Paul Stanley's playing on a different part of the guitar, and it's like a harmony. It's a harmony intro, the way they do that. And it's very, like I say, it's one of those things that, you think Kiss is just like all power chords and this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
There's a lot of underlying stuff that people don't even really realize, and that's kind of what I do when it comes down to my How's It Hump Day.
Yeah.
My Facebook thing I do every week.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that, Paul, so people know what we're talking about.
What's that?
I said, yeah, to tell people what you're talking about, because you were telling me, I guess that's what you
Okay.
said. Explain what that is. Yeah.
Okay. Well, when I have a Facebook Live event that I do every Wednesday.
Okay.
It's at 4 p.m. Pacific, and I've been doing it 2 months now, and like I say, it's called How's It Hump Day.
Okay.
Wednesday at 4 p.m. Pacific time, and I just get on there and I just like to have fun, with people out there in Facebook land, and I talk about what happened that week, during this week in rock.
Yeah.
And I go back in and I say, okay, so and so was born on this day in Austria or whatever country they were from or wherever state they were born in.
Yeah.
And then I kind of get into a little bit of just talking to the people, and you have questions for me, go ahead and ask. People will ask questions, and I'll answer them, and then lately, after the past couple of episodes, I've been taking one Kiss song.
Oh, cool.
And I do a deep dive into that song, and I kind of as I'll bring the song up and I'll play it so people can hear it in the background.
Wow.
And then I say, okay, and they'll stop it at a certain point, and I'll say, okay, and I told the people, I said, this is not meant to be a guitar lesson to teach you to learn how to teach you how to play the song.
Yeah.
It's just so I can let you know what's going on,
as I'm doing
the guitar parts in the song.
Yeah.
And so people have really gotten into it, and I'm starting to get suggestions from my regulars. I don't have 1,000 people watching.
Yeah. Just hang out. Yeah, to hang out. It's kind of fun.
I get like 10, 15 people watching, and I'm starting to get suggestions from them now, and which is really cool. Hey, check, do something. Do this song. Do this song. And because they were like going in the unmasked years, and I was like,
I don't know that.
I don't do that. I don't do that kind of Paul Stanley guitar for let me see, War Machine. Gods of Thunder doesn't do War Machine. We don't do any of the unmasked, non-original Kiss early years.
Oh, interesting. Okay, that's one thing I didn't know about your band. So that's pretty interesting. And I will tell you now. Speaking of unmasked, one of my all-time favorite Paul Stanley tunes, I mean, it's kind of a deep cut, is the first track off Unmasked, Is That You? Kind of a great rockin' kind of Paul Stanley sounding tune. Interesting enough, Paul Stanley didn't write it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that you?
Yeah. I mean, you can look it up on the Wikipedia. I know Paul didn't write it, and I was going back when the album first. I always loved that tune, but I don't know. It just seemed like a Kiss tune, but it's really not.
Yeah. Well, since we're talking about Kiss.
Yeah.
Gene Simmons had his involvement
in Van
Halen.
Yeah.
And he talked about seeing them at this. I can't remember the name of the place. The Starwood.
Oh yeah, that's one of the clubs here in LA where Quiet Riot also started out when they were with Randy Rose early on. That's one of the first places Quiet Riot ever played. Yeah,
and he kind of wanted to help them out and mentor them a little bit, and then because he was just blown away by of course Eddie Van Halen's.
Yeah, so much to the point that I think that he was also trying to get Bill Coyne to manage them, but Bill Coyne wasn't interested. I guess he lived to regret that.
Yeah, none of the guys in Kiss, got it. They didn't see the big picture when it came to Van Halen.
Well, Kiss, I think too. I mean, let's be honest here. It's kind of interesting because especially Paul Stanley and Gene, they're very much into Kiss as far as not wanting anybody to outshine Kiss, if you know what I mean. For example, they were on the same label as that band Angel with Punky Meadows, and I guess they were very good friends with the guys, but Gene and Paul personally never wanted to go on tour because they were kind of afraid, I think, that Angel would blow them off the stage, so to speak.
Oh, yeah.
And then I've heard Geezer Butler from Black Sabbath recently saying how this has just been the last month or so. Supposedly, that he liked when they toured with Van Halen early on one of the first Van Halen tours, but Van Halen was opening act. But he felt that David Lee Roth was ripping off of what Ozzy was trying to do, and I'm like, I don't think David Lee Roth even moves or acts or even sounds anything like Ozzy, so I really don't get that. But I think what he was trying to say is that people were saying that when they did that tour, Van Halen was blowing Sabbath off the stage. Maybe that was his gripe, I guess.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah. Comparing Ozzy to David Lee Roth is like apples and oranges.
Yeah, because it's kind of funny. I mean, I have an appreciation for what Ozzy does, but I'll be honest, as far as Black Sabbath, I'm a fan of the classic stuff, but I like a lot more what they did with Dio.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree.
And it's like if you go listen to those classic Black Sabbath albums, they've got some good stuff on them. I'm talking about like Iron Man and War Pigs and that. But the interesting thing, if you really listen to the music, Ozzy may get credited as a songwriter, but it was really Geezer Butler that wrote a lot of those lyrics and Tony Iommi. And it's almost like the vocalists on those albums. It didn't really matter. You were listening more of a guitar playing than the rest of the band, I think.
Yeah,
Whereas by the time Dio gets into the band, he, like Geezer's saying, well, once Ronnie joined, I didn't have to write the lyrics anymore. Ronnie kind of took it to another place. And if you listen to Ronnie's lyrics, I mean, he really does. I mean, it talks about demons and wizards. You can visualize what he's singing about.
Right. Oh yeah. You close your eyes and listen to Ronnie James Dio singing some of those songs, and it's like, okay, he's painting a picture.
Oh yeah. I mean,
for you. Yes.
He was one of the best lyric writers I've ever heard. On record.
Yes.
And I'll never forget. The last tour he did with Black Sabbath a few years before he died. Seeing him, I mean, he's this little tiny guy. I mean, I seen him on the stage, a little tiny guy, but just a powerhouse voice. I mean, you could hear him all the way back in the arena, but just powerhouse.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah. That's what you. He was a little dude. He was very diminutive.
Yeah.
When you're talking about the height of your average rock star who's like 6 foot.
Yeah.
But his voice was bigger than anything.
Yeah. Well,
he could sing. Ronnie James Dio could sing. Man.
Yeah, and Paul, before we wrap this up tonight, I got to tell people, I really urge them to go on either your personal Facebook page, which is Paul Delis, or the band's page, which of course is Gods of Thunder. And I want people to look at the photos because anybody, I'll tell you, you're one of the most authentic bands out there as far as the Kiss tribute bands. I mean, I can think of a handful.
Thanks.
I can think of a handful of great Kiss tribute bands. I mean, you guys stand out. Probably the next one would be there's a band, Mr. Speed.
Yes.
And they're really a great band too. They're great at what they do. But like you said, you guys cover a lot of early stuff, just the makeup stuff. And I'll tell you, you're one of the most authentic Paul Stanleys. I mean, how hard is it for you to kind of get into that Paul vibe before? Because I mean, if anybody goes on, they look these photos like I'm talking about, or they go and check out any videos of the band that are on YouTube or whatever. You and the whole band, you guys really look like Kiss. You look like authentic Paul Stanley. You got the moves down. How hard was that for you to kind of get all that down?
Well, let me see. Well, as far as the makeup and the hair and the look, the hair is really mine. It's not a wig.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, some are. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really my hair. You know, I have curly hair like that, and very, very lucky, very blessed at almost 59 years old to still have a full head of hair. And don't tell anybody, but I do dye my hair. I do color my hair.
Well, hey, it's all for rock and roll, right?
And it's all in the name of rock and roll and being authentic. And that's the thing about Gods of Thunder. You know, we want to be the most authentic, true to life Kiss tribute band, and it starts with the individual. Whoever's playing, you know, Gene Simmons or Paul Stanley or Ace Frehley or Peter Criss, or if you get into the later stuff, you know, Vinnie Vincent, Eric Carr, you know, if you're doing a makeup type thing. So it comes down to the individual that's portraying that person.
And I think part of it too is you know, like you're saying, you got to really, if you're just doing for a paycheck, people can tell. I mean, I think that's the part of the reason you come off as so authentic. You're just as much of a Kiss fan as I am, you know, or anybody else in the audience.
Right. Yeah. And that's where it all starts is from your passion within.
Yeah. It's like I've heard Paul Stanley say in interviews many times over years. He says, look, you know, we have people that influenced us when we were growing up. We kind of we took the guitars and we jumped up on stage and we put on our own show, and you know, we're doing it now.
Right.
And what do you think of the, you know, you hear Kiss talking about over the last several years, you know, they're going to go on their farewell tour finally, and they're talking about, or you know, Kiss may continue on in some form, and Gene and Paul talking about we may even hire our own replacements. What do you think about that? I mean, I don't know if you'd consider that a Kiss tribute or.
Well, you know, because ever since Ace and Peter left again after you know, after this latest go round, now they're on the end of the road tour.
Yeah. And
you know, all props and respect to the guys up on stage. Yeah. You know, Paul and Gene are, you know, they're the original. Tommy Thayer, he's a pretty darn good lead guitarist, pretty good ace friend. Tommy Thayer was in a Kiss tribute band called Cold Gin
with Jamie St. James from Black and Blue. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
he was in Cold Gin, and so basically, he pretty much is a tribute guy that had a tribute band guy that had his ultimate dream come true. To actually play for the real band. Well,
you know, Tommy's story is a little more interesting than that because. He also played on Black and Blue, you know, which Gene produced, but
right, yeah.
But once Black and Blue kind of fell apart, before he ever thought about replacing Ace in the band, he was their road manager and he worked behind the scenes, like even as far back I remember as '95 on the Unplugged tour. He did a lot of behind the scenes stuff with them, and a lot of those Kiss Street videos. He helped, you know, put that stuff together. So he's kind of worked his way up, and I hear what you're saying, but. I guess my final thought on this is well,
he was also Ace's
guitar tech. Yeah, and I heard on the reunion tour, you know, Ace himself is not a big Tommy fan, but it was actually Tommy supposedly that had to reteach Ace how to play a lot of those early Kiss songs.
That's what I've heard. I don't know if that's if that's 100% true, but. Yeah, you know, rumor control has it, yes.
Yeah. And a final question regarding that for you tonight, Paul, which is this. I kind of, you know, you hear Paul and Gene talking over years about, and I think there's some truth to this. I mean, it's almost ironic that these four characters they created, the Cat, the Demon, the Star Child, the Spaceman, I almost think in a lot of ways the characters have become bigger than the guys that created them. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, you know, are you speaking from?
Well, you know, like how you hear Gene and Paul talking. Yeah, I mean, you hear Gene and Paul say, "Oh, you know, well, you know, Peter. We know Peter and Ace are original members, but you know, when people think of Kiss, they those are the four characters they think of, and I think that's kind of true.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it is. Because you know, once again, you're going back to the grassroots of the band.
Yeah.
And that was the grassroots of the band was the Demon, the Star Child, the Space Ace, and the Catman. That's the original grassroots foundations of Kiss. So when you think of Kiss, that's what it should be.
Yeah.
That's where your mind should transport you, is to that.
And I think Bruce Kulick's maybe one of the luckiest guys in Kiss because for a lot of reasons. But I mean, he's probably the one member that he never had to make that decision. Like a lot of people have joked with him, Bruce, what character would you have been? Oh, maybe the dog. But I've heard him talk about. I kind of like the fact that I had my era of the band. I didn't have to make a decision about was I going to wear Ace's makeup. And he kind of knows his place in Kiss, and that's why I think Gene and Paul have never had a problem with him, Yep,
and Bruce Kulick. Little note about Bruce Kulick joined Gods of Thunder on stage for 2 songs. I believe it was in 2009 or 2000, somewhere around that time frame, 2009, 2010. And Bruce Kulick is one of the coolest guys in the world.
Yeah.
That guy, when he got to the venue that night, he pulled out his guitar out of his car, and we stood in the parking lot with him for like 20 minutes.
Now, did you guys know he was going to show up, or did he just like make a pop-up appearance?
Well, we knew in advance, but it was like, wow, this is really cool.
This is really happening.
Bruce Kulick playing with us.
And do you remember?
In advance.
Do you remember what songs he played on with you guys?
He did Rock and Roll All Night, and he did what was it, Deuce.
Oh, cool! Wow.
He played Deuce and Rock and Roll All Night with us. We kind of rearranged our set list, so those 2 songs fell back to back. But yeah, that was freaking cool. I mean, he was absolutely amazing, down to earth, and like I said, we were in the parking lot, just standing there, just talking, and the people from the venue came out and said, "Are you guys going to play tonight, or are you just going to stand out here in the parking lot and talk with Bruce forever?"
Wow. Okay, I guess the show must go on. I mean, what a cool thing to be able to do with your band. Could you imagine? You got this little Kiss tribute band, and then you get to play with one of the members of Kiss. How cool is that?
It was phenomenal. Like I said, and he told us after the show, he's like, "You guys are really, really good." I was like, "Man, I wish I would have had that on video."
Tape. Yeah.
He goes, "You guys are very good." He goes, "Excellent job."
I think that's part of the reason you guys, because you come across as so authentic. I think that's part of the reason for your longevity, And 2 final questions for you, Paul, and then we will wrap it up. I was curious, as a guy who does Paul Stanley fan, if you've heard the new Soul Station album, and what are your thoughts on that?
Love it.
Yeah, I think the thing about Paul that's interesting, if you listen to the 3 solo albums he's put out over the years, they're all very, very different, and I think that's what fans dig, is it's not like a repeat of everything, of the same old thing.
Right. Yeah, it's not a carbon copy. He didn't put it in throw a CD in there and say, okay, make me an album that sounds like this.
He could have done, the '78 solo album all over again, but even Live to Win was much more of a metal album, even, I dare say.
Yes.
And it's kind of interesting. And then final question I was going to ask you for the night. Being that like Paul Stanley has 3 solo albums worth of material now, have you ever thought about like doing a Paul Stanley solo show, or would you want to stick with just doing Kiss?
No, because I know bands that have
done that.
That have tribute bands that have kind of like broken off and kind of like done that little
thing,
slight right turn.
Yeah,
and
never works, right?
To me, I mean, if it works for them,
great,
cool.
Yeah.
But for me, I don't think that would be a venture that I would want to undertake, because I enjoy what I have, and I enjoy what I do with Gods of Thunder and portraying Paul Stanley with my band, and I don't know if I would enjoy it as much
otherwise. I mean, let's be honest. A lot of people going to the Gods of Thunder because they know those Kiss songs. I mean, if you were to do something like I was saying, not everybody's going to know the Soul Station album necessarily.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're not going to know some of the stuff on Paul Stanley's solo album from '78. And then they're going to scratch their head when it comes to Live to Win. It's like you're playing. I mean, Kiss is a worldwide, global phenomenon.
Yeah, I mean,
Paul Stanley is one member in one piece in that cog. Of the world. And then when you start breaking it down into his individual albums and his individual songs, then you're really starting to narrow that. Now that I think about it, I mean, I think you'd have a much easier time, putting together like a Paul McCartney solo set list, because I mean, there's more albums to pick from. It sounds a little more of the same. Whereas like you're saying, Live to Win, and you throw in Soul Station, it's like, this is a little eclectic. Yeah, you're targeting a very, very specific,
narrow audience. Yeah.
Specific narrow window of a crowd, and so like I say, I wouldn't do that. Not just for that reason, just because I love performing with all the guys in Gods of Thunder. Armando Cisneros, Carl Morelli, Randy Chambers, some of the greatest people. Not only musicians and entertainers and performers, but some of the greatest people that I've known. I've known Mondo since the beginning. Mike Gene Simmons, he's the one that discovered me at a Kiss concert.
How cool is that? Wow, yeah. And it's kind of unique that you and him kind of are the core members of the band, as far as the guys that founded it. It's kind of, he found you, and you guys have stuck together ever since.
Yes, and that's another parallel that I can draw to the actual band.
Like Gene and Paul have this unique like brotherhood all these years later. I've even in recent years heard Paul say, Gene and me, we may get on each other's nerves, but he's like the brother I never had, but I love.
Right. Yeah. And Armando and I, we've bumped heads. We haven't always agreed on everything when it came to the band.
But nobody does, really.
But nobody does. It's like a marriage.
Yeah.
If your marriage is all unicorns and rainbows, I want to know where you're living.
Yeah, what's your secret?
That's not in my world.
Yeah, you're living in fairy tales, but okay.
Yeah.
And I was just going to ask before we go, how's COVID? What is the impact COVID-19 has had on your band? I mean, have you guys totally been locked down and not been able to perform for the last year?
Yes, COVID has devastated, live entertainment worldwide. I mean, it's just life in general. Has come to a pretty much a standstill. Yeah. There was a long pause where nobody was able to do anything because we didn't know what was going on. Scientists didn't have a clue.
Yeah.
And then now things are starting to open. Gods of Thunder, we have not done anything since the shutdown.
Well, the reason I asked is I seen on your page that you guys have a gig you're going to announce soon, so that's great, because people need to get out there and be entertained.
Jason, the gig is official. Gods of Thunder is playing in the city of Victorville at the San Bernardino County Fair.
Wow.
On June 13th, Sunday, June 13th, the last day of the fair.
Wow.
We are gonna be the final closing act, the last thing that people at the San Bernardino County Fair for 2021 see.
Give them.
We're gonna go in there and we're gonna blow the roof off the place. We're gonna have a Kiss concert, a celebration like we have never ever experienced before, because it's been so long since we played, and we are just
dying to go
at the bit, and we're dying to get up on the stage and do it. And we finally get the chance coming up next month in June.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. I'll have to talk to you about how the show goes, but thanks for doing this, Paul. I don't know if you can tell, but I really enjoyed talking to you, and the interview is going to be going up in early June. I'll let you know once it goes up, and let's keep in touch, and we'll have to do this again.
Yeah. I love sitting down doing this with you, Jason. It's kind of fun because because you have some things that you take your way, and then we kind of like bounce it back and forth off each other. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, you know what it is? It's our it's our mutual love, not just for Kiss, but all things music. I think music has a way of really bringing people together.
Yeah, and I never did get to get into, because I wanted to say one thing about Gene Simmons when he had Van Halen in New York.
Okay.
And he had that those 20-some songs that he recorded.
Yeah.
You know, on demos. There's one up on YouTube. It's called Van Halen House of Pain.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's because there's if you go to the Van Halen album 1984, there's I think a song they do on there called House of Pain. I'm not sure if it's the same one, but I'll have to look that up. And real quick, Paul, a great source I think for you to go on Facebook to kind of have stuff to talk about. There's this great Facebook group called This Day in Metal, and like you were talking, they list like this album came out on this day, in 1996 or whatever. So you might want to look that up. It's called This Day in Metal. I'll send you a link if you want.
Okay, I'm writing it down right now. This Day in Metal.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Take care, buddy. Bye-bye.
Jason?
Thanks, Paul.
Okay, yeah, no problem. I had a great time.
Me too. Bye-bye. We'll do it again, I promise.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah, just get in touch with me, maybe in a month or so.
Yeah. Maybe after you do the show. How's that?
Yeah, after I do the show, that we have a little more to talk about, something Gods of Thunder related. That's cool, bro.
Okay, take care, buddy. Bye-bye.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.